this. When I give you an example that a particular complaint has exhibited a propensity different from your assumption, which is actually does not fear authority, would it impact on your assumptions about them specifically? I know your generalized view, but I'm saying, would it not affect your analysis?
I would certainly want to look at it.
Would it impact your analysis at all?
It would depend on on the information.
If the information is that actually this person, this complainant has actually even physically confronted a line manager, a supervisor, what would you do? Would you still interpret them as, I'm giving you a practical example.
I would want to know more about the circumstances, because what it might indicate is somebody who has difficulty with conflict and conflict resolution, somebody who veers between. You can have somebody who is very aggressive under some circumstances. You have people who are passive aggressive. People can shift between different things. So I would want to have a look at those details to see how do they add up.
All right, I'll leave this question. I think I'm not going to get the answer you don't like. Let me move to the paper that we were dealing with yesterday, just for one point, for its conclusion. Let me first ask, you are before this tribunal as an expert in what? Sexual harassment, power in general as a notion, as an academic notion, or psychology or emojis?
Definitely not psychology, definitely not emojis. My expertise is in gender-based violence. So I'm assuming that's why the tribunal thought I could add to a view on sexual harassment. And if you look at most of the theorization on gender-based violence, it is rooted in an understanding of power. So the two are related. So one underpins the other.
It's fine, it's fine. So where we find you saying an emoji means deferring, but an emoji specialist says it's flirtatious, we should believe not you, but the expert on emojis.
Yes.
All right. Because you touch on the subject of power, I want to take you to this paper, just one conclusion, and then we'll move to the theory of power. You will see that the paper you refer to by Graham and Papudi, right at the end, one of the things they say, and it relates to the subject you ventured into, and my learned friend started there, is power relations. And the conclusion they make is that although they were dealing with young people in depressed economic environments, but they say the findings presented in this article demonstrate that while dominant, patriarchal essentialist notions of masculinity and femininity strongly shape the gender identities of the young men and women in these studies, and in turn their sexuality, their negotiation of gender identity and sexuality is also contested and fluid, right? And I mean, what this does is that it tells us, and I think you will agree with me, that it tells us that power relations are not static. Would you agree with me? That they are fluid. You don't have to agree. It's a notion by Farquhar. You may believe in the other theorists on power, that power is everywhere. It means it moves. Would you think in relational power relations that's the case as well?
My PhD does deal with Foucault, where I've looked a great deal at his notions of power as diffuse and its multiple forms. Yes. So I think when we look at this, and this is what I was trying to explain, we should not be thinking of power in blunt and one-dimensional terms. That we must think about it as multidimensional, and you may have heard me saying it is dynamic. It is built on the interactions between each other. Foucault's other point is that there is discourse. which shapes us into particular ways and means it makes it difficult to break out of discourse. So the examples I am using when I speak about things like assumptions about male and female sexuality, those are discourses.
Yeah.
They are powerful discourses that trap us, in which people read us through those discourses. They take on a certain solidity, even though they don't necessarily have it. So that is certainly the way I would be thinking about power. That is why I do distinguish between formal and informal power, because you cannot ignore that there is formal power. There is informal power. There is an acknowledgement that people find ways to resist and to exercise agency within their particular roles, or however they may be. But yes, it is important to take a complex notion of power that recognizes how it shifts and does alter, but that you also, and this is an area where Foucault has been critiqued, is that sometimes he speaks about power in such diffuse terms, you can't actually realize where its center is and how you deal with it. And one must still explain things like workplace jobs and rules and formality, the way power is working in this room at multiple levels. So yes, there are multiple ways to look at power. That's my very long way to say it.
Once again, we agree. Yeah, I was just saying to you, because human relations and power, in fact, we'll deal with that, because that's as you say, I'm not an expert in Foucault and power. I just thought it's something you could enlighten us, because I think, and you've done that. All I was saying to you is that you would agree with me that when you're looking at engagement between two people, it's a mistake to think that power remains in the same place as formally established in the relations between two people. It can shift.
That's my point about it being dynamic.
Yeah. So even between someone that you think they are in a childlike father relationship, and I'm not mocking the point, because it's an important point you make, but I'm saying even in those relations, power can shift between two people, someone who's known to be powerful, dealing with someone who's formally less powerful, but in their interaction, power can shift from the formally powerful to the formally powerless.
That can happen, and I think my evidence was that you can see things shifting between them, and you can see a change in the nature of the interactions, and you can see, particularly after a particular date, that they have changed. So quite clearly, things have altered, and the fact that somebody makes a complaint shows that things are shifting.
Yes, and you're so right that can shift even during a conversation. It's or during, let's call it a relationship, right? And it can happen during courting, flirting. In any form of relationship, that can happen. Friendship, romance, marriage.
Yeah, relationships are dynamic.
Yes. Well, you also ventured into advice on something that I'm definitely sure you're not an expert on. You said you would have advised, or you would, if the JP was interested in the complainant, he should have approached it differently. You remember that? Is this an area you're an expert in? The area of courting in his culture or their culture? Is it something we should take your word on, that of suggesting to a closer man how he should engage in courting? Is it something that we should take as your expertise?
No, and I'm not offering it to him. I'm not offering him advice in terms of his love life. My commentary was based on policy work in relation to sexual harassment and workplace relations. That was the context in which the advice was offered, and it has been, in some of the work that I've done on sexual harassment, we put that into policy. So this was in the context of talking about workplace relations, because you have, as I pointed out, a blurring going on here.
You even said that he must at least seek permission from his wife.
Well, I was saying in the context of a workplace, it would be difficult if we're saying it needs to be regulated and you need to put forward that you are interested in somebody. That's going to be, in his situation, somewhat difficult if he is already married. I'm acknowledging that that might be somewhat difficult if you put that into a policy where you ask, which has been done, where you regulate relationships.
Yeah, all I'm saying to you is that you are venturing into advising somebody about something that is well embedded in particular regions, particular cultures, particular languages, and it's not your area.
My advice was in relation to how do you manage relations in the workplace.
Yeah, but you were also advising, you were talking about what he should have done if he's interested in a woman.
That is in relation to the workplace.
Yes, but I'm saying you were not talking about work. You were talking about how he should approach a woman. It doesn't matter where.
No, my comments were restricted to the workplace. It's
So
it's not appropriate for me to be mentioning what he should be doing outside the workplace, but we are talking about a workplace scenario and what is recommended you ought to be thinking about or considering within a workplace context.
I agree with you. But all I'm saying to you is that you agreed with me yesterday, and I told you that you were the expert of last resort because what was needed was someone who has the cultural and linguistic nuances to understand a couple of things. One, the conversation between two people of a particular culture. Secondly, assumptions about how courting, let's call it dating how it happens in particular cultures. And you agreed with me that cultural and linguistic nuances are important in analyzing what's appropriate and what's not.
That is correct, but again, we're talking about what is appropriate in the workplace.
Yes, no, I'm with you. I'm saying whether we're going to get there, whether dating someone who you work with or someone you don't work with, all I'm saying to you is that we established that culturally and linguistically, things vary from, well, when how people do things can be influenced by the dominant culture and linguistic nuances in that culture. You agree with me?
That I agree with you, but I don't take your previous point, which I think you're trying to connect, that means that in the workplace, that alters relations, allows relations to happen in a particular place. There are different rules that govern a workplace. That is my point.
It's fine. What advice would you give the complainant, as you gave the respondent in the same situation?
When faced with a situation like
Faced
this,
with someone who's flirting.
well, one would sit and talk to her and ask with her, what does she feel comfortable with? What does she not feel uncomfortable with? Is she able to approach him? What might be difficult about approaching him?
Okay.
If these and these are the difficulties, what are the ways in which we might get around those difficulties? How else could this be addressed? Could somebody intervene on her behalf and go and speak to him? If she's not yet at a point where she is ready to lay a grievance or go to human resources or whatever it is, what else can she do? In some situations where somebody doesn't feel they're able to do anything, you will advise them to keep a diary of interactions so that they know what is going on and that they don't forget what is going on, because if this should ever go to trial, they would need to know what they would need to be able to know and what to remember. You would look at ways in which you could try to assist them to feel more assertive, to find out what kind of support they have. If they feel they cannot do anything about it, then to ask, do you have anyone who can support you, who can help you, assist you? How can we help you? Would counseling support you in order to be able to feel more confident? So you would look at what is it that the person can manage? What is it that you can realistically ask them to do? Somebody who is in a very difficult workplace situation, you just have to take into account what is that person capable of and explore with them what their options are.
Am I wrong, Ms. Vetten, that, and I'm not wrong, am I wrong to assume that in your testimony, and as it is in your papers correctly, so you are more sympathetic towards a complainant, not a complainant?
That is my background.
Yes.
I have been a counsellor.
Okay. Yeah, no,
And
I'm
I'm
just
there to assist. This is the
the
basis of it.
complainants. Yeah, okay. Would you think that kind of stance? I told you where I wouldn't be a good expert yesterday because I wouldn't be objective. Do you think that stance makes you objective or not objective?
Well, as I'm sure you're familiar, there is a great deal of contestation around what the word objective means.
No, yeah, I know.
But
You can lecture me about it.
no, I'll spare you that.
Okay.
So I think my experience is with complainants. The reasons why people have asked me to be an expert in other situations or to come and give testimony is for the simple reason that gendered forms of violence have a long history. And excuse me if I'm sorry if I'm lecturing
No, it's fine.
you.
No, it's fine.
They have a long history of having been overlooked, having been neglected, having been downplayed, having been dismissed. Our constitution has tried to do that. We have constitutional court cases that try to recognize this. So one of the ideas behind expert testimony is that in a context where women's experiences have been routinely dismissed and where they have not been recognized and where the law has not been able to accommodate them and where they may be unfamiliar, sometimes you may need somebody who has that kind of particular background or knowledge to come and say, within the context of what we know, this is how somebody may behave. It's to give context. Because quite often what can happen is that people may think women's responses are simply bizarre, or they don't understand them, they don't make sense. So the idea is to have somebody who can say, well, based on the background, based on the experience, based on what we think about power relations, this is how it can be understood.
I agree with you, but that makes you, and which you are, by the way, and the good one is you are an advocate for women's issues, which is correct. In fact, you are an advocate. No one does it like you do in this country for 30 years. You are an advocate for complainants of sexual harassment. That I accept. But all I'm saying is that let me put this danger to you because I put it to myself that if I were to testify in matters where I must choose between African people and others, I would refuse because I have a particular affinity. And I would refuse because I would not resist the temptation of not being objective. And all I'm saying to you is that, well, with that background, which is not a bad background, do you agree with me that a person like you and me who have strong views about a particular side of things can actually sacrifice objectivity and present views that are filled with their own feelings and idiosyncrasies?
I would hope not, because as I said to you earlier, I sit on panels and I am required to adjudicate on matters. And there have been cases where I have not been, where looking at the evidence, you cannot find somebody guilty of sexual harassment. Yeah. There have also been occasions where I've been asked to comment on someone's behavior and I've had to say, there is no sexual harassment. Yes. So I have an insight and experience, but that doesn't mean I automatically come to something assuming.
Yeah, no, I'm not making that accusation against you. I'm just saying that where objectivity is required, and I'll go to the things that I think you omitted yesterday, and I will tell you why I think you omitted them, and you can differ with me. First of all, if we move to one of the assumptions you made yesterday when I conclude this thing about culture, is that you said something very powerful, that a yes is not a yes in perpetuity. Am I summarizing your view? Is a no in perpetuity?
No, not necessarily. However, if you look at the law does say that it is no until such time. It is no until somebody says something different, but one must bear in mind where that is not an invitation. This is where the line becomes one you have to think about very carefully. That if somebody says no, it doesn't mean you keep on coming back, because then you are repeated. Somebody said to you no. If you keep coming back after they've said no, that is repeated, and then you are running into harassment.
So actually, you are saying to me, a no is a no in perpetuity. Really?
Yes, unless somebody comes to you and says, I've changed my mind.
Yes. And if I told you that expert evidence you've just given doesn't take into account a number of cultural practices, prevailing cultural practices about courting, and I'm going to give you a couple of words. You should know them because you are an expert. You've ventured in. Let's take it in Xhosa. The word "uqhasa." You familiar with it?
No,
Are you familiar with the Zulu word "ukushela"?
I've heard it.
Are you familiar with the word? It's another Xhosa word "ukuphimisa."
No, I've not spent time in the Eastern Cape, so I'm afraid
All right.
I'm not going to be able to recognize Xhosa.
But okay, let's take. Let me help you with what they connote. It's an exercise of courting between two people. As you said, it's men, usually. In fact, it's frowned upon, I think, if it's not a man. But let's say, as Dinoa told us, it happens. Would you differ with me when I say those three words emerging from those particular cultures? We can criticize those cultures if we like. In them, they connote and involve persistence, pleading. In fact, the word "ukushela", even outside courting, is suggested to mean pleading with somebody.
That may well be correct.
Yeah, so I'm saying when you are not aware of particular cultural notions, you can miss in language a discussion between two people of a particular culture if your interpretation comes, one, from a position of ignorance of their cultural exchange, their culture, right? Or you come from a position of what you would call a superior culture. It means a culture that assumes, usually Eurocentric, that its understanding of things, including romance, must be universal. And I'm putting it to you that in a discussion between two people of a particular culture and region, it's inaccurate to impose your interpretation in relation to that aspect.
Again, are we talking about workplaces or outside workplaces? If it's outside of workplaces, that is a different matter. In a workplace, there are particular rules about how you engage. I think the other thing one has to take into account is that this is possibly one of the most thorny and contested areas in South Africa, are these questions about culture and the Constitution.
Yeah.
Is the Constitution the supreme law of the land? Does the Constitution set what are some fundamental or basic values and norms that we should all adhere to? Or does it say, no, we don't? So I think those are the kinds of things that one needs to look at. And as somebody who comes from a different culture, it has certainly long been the norm as well. And this, I think, has been the criticism that, and this is another stereotype, this idea that when women say no, they mean yes, and therefore you should persist. It
Okay.
is not
Yes, ma'am.
unique.
Please don't bastardize the suggestion I'm making of respect. I know exactly I know exactly in what cases a no means no. I'm just raising an issue to that may be an oversight on your part. Please don't reduce what I'm saying to suggest that I don't understand circumstances when a woman says or a man says no, they mean a no. I was just saying to you, your analysis may be deficient when you are analyzing a conversation between two people about a subject matter that has cultural implications in how it's handled. That's all I was saying. And your reference to the Constitution is a little offensive because you are suggesting that in the notions I'm telling you, those notions of cultural interactions are somewhat inferior or violate the Constitution. I was not suggesting that.
That's not what I'm suggesting either.
Okay. So do you accept with me? The Constitution does not talk about what we're talking about here. Courting, flirting. It doesn't. So I don't know how you brought it up.
This is what I was talking about with blurred. One person's courting and flirting might be another person's harassment. This is precisely why we end up having sexual harassment matters, because the one party will say, but I was simply appreciating her. I was simply complimenting her. And the other party will say, that is not how I felt. That is not how I felt. That is not how I experienced it, and what it was unwelcome to me.
Yes.
That is precisely why we have these disputes, because there is contestation over what is it you want, who determines what you want, how do you communicate what you want. So we try to find ways in which we can arrive at some kind of more or less a set of norms.
Yeah.
Where we can interpret and understand each other. The Constitution attempts to try and do that.
Yeah, but I'm going to move from this subject. All
right, before you move from it, when Mr. Sikhakhane put those three concepts to you in relation to courtship and how they may be put in practice, you said, here you are talking about a work relationship. Your suggestion then that the work relationship trumps all those practices, or you are not saying that?
I'm saying this is why it gets very tricky, is because you have a workplace that sets out one set of rules, and then this is where it becomes so difficult, is you have a workplace that has quite clear sets of rules. The professional, that is, you are supposed to keep separate from the personal. And then when the personal comes in, it can be in conflict with the professional. And that is where the dilemma can sometimes arise, is which do I respond to?
Yes, yeah. Well, if your answer is that there is a dilemma, then that's sufficient answer. Because I just wanted to know whether you are saying that the work situation trumps those cultural...
it creates conflict.
Yes, all right, that's fine. And before we move on, can we just for the record, please, Mr. Sikhakhane, just spell out those three concepts in writing so that when people transcribe the record, they don't create their own words.
Yes, I will try and assist. And I'm no expert in the three of them, but I know how to spell them.
Yes. Yeah, please spell them for those who are going to transcribe the record.
Yes, I will do so to yes, and yeah, and you know, in this case, and I think it's on the record that we're not furnished with a policy that regulates that in this particular case.
No, no, you're not.
Yeah. So it's an area that is unregulated. But as I said, all I wanted you to understand, at least to agree with me, is that this entire conversation requires an expert to, in order to interpret what people are doing and saying, to also be aware that it has its own cultural insinuations that are more important than the experts' idiosyncrasies and views.
There is certainly culture to be taken into account, but culture is not the only thing that is at play here.
I didn't say so.
Yeah, so I think that is what one has to bear in mind, is that culture is clearly an important factor, but it is not the only factor.
Yeah.
So there are other things that can be looked at in addition to that.
Please assume that I know those basic things about life. And then if we let's get to the yes or no. Yes in perpetuity or no in perpetuity. I know this may not change your view. If I told you that in the record, the complainant, and I'll take you to page 1265 of the record.
You'll have to give me a date. I don't have numbered.
Oh, you've got them as dates. I think it's 9 October 2021, the conversation. 1265 specifically. It's a conversation at 13 minutes past 9, 21:13.
Yes?
You see that, oh yeah, sorry, Chair, sorry. 1265.
Thank you.
And we may or may not agree with this. It's that conversation. Yes. It's a discussion. It's a conversation they are having about a very important case about consent.
Okay, so it's the 14th of October,
Yeah.
the Kokoro matter.
Yes. And the complainant's views are expressed there about consent. In fact, I think she says that once, and I'll read, ifundisa xoxela ukuba ebeyazile complainant ngokwangoku ya ukuba ukuthi yes kwakhe koyokuqala akho boundaries for next, one thing led to another wethu. Says if he agreed at the beginning, there are no boundaries after that. There is no after that yes. What's your comment with the complainant's views? Because she differs with you on the perpetuity or non-perpetuity of a yes. She says this woman who ended up in this situation, raped by someone who claims, no, you agreed that I kiss you. Her view on this issue is that the first yes meant no boundaries after that. It's interpreted in page 1331 if you want to get the English version. And I can read it to you. It says, it teaches you to be suspicious. If the complainant knew then that when you say yes to the first request, then there will be no boundaries for the next. Those are her views on yes.
I did look at this and was thinking, there are two ways to interpret that. The one is to say that if you do allow someone to touch you, then whatever happens thereafter is you've given permission to. Or the other way to interpret what she's saying is that if I say yes, then it's assumed that I'm saying yes to everything thereafter. So I read that as saying potentially two things. It's a bit ambiguous.
Am I wrong, Ms. Lisa Vetten, that actually every time we interpret what she says, you are more sympathetic towards her, to interpret it sympathetically than you do with the respondent?
No, I'm saying there are two potential interpretations here. Either one could be either one could be right. Okay. This is one of these occasions where you have to say to her, what did you mean?
It's fine. I'll leave that. I'm going to go to...
Because I can agree with you. She's not entirely sympathetic to the complainant. That's how I will agree with you.
That's why I was leaving it, Miss Lisa, because as an intellectual, I expect you to have a much more open discussion with me than evasive. So, but I'm happy if that's because I think those views are at odds with your view.
Which view?
Now I'm saying if she says a yes is a yes in perpetuity, if that's one of the views.
As I said, there are two ways you can read this. If you yes to the first request and there are no boundaries for the next, it means you have said yes to everything else. That is certainly the one interpretation you can place on it. The other is if you do say yes to something, it's going to be taken to mean that you've said yes to everything else. Two meanings. She would have to clarify which one she meant.
All right. She would have to clarify. That's why we get back to the point that actually it's important to establish from her what she means about things, rather than to interpret them sympathetically or not sympathetically from a distance. It makes the point I was making to you about faced with what your interpretations of what she does. I see now that you, for some reason, now you respect the fact that it would depend on her. And that's what I was saying to you earlier, is that faced with what she says and does, we've got to give weight, as you do now, to her intentions and what she means. This is a 42-year-old woman, smart, divorced, has been through life, and knows what she means, and says what she means, and means what she says. You and I have no reason to doubt it. Do you disagree with me?
No, but that doesn't mean she always knows exactly what she wants. I mean, we must assume that she went from a position of not saying anything to laying a formal complaint. Clearly, that shows that she has changed her position.
How do you know that?
Well, presumably she would have gone to lay the charge at the first
No,
time
I'm saying,
she was
how do you
offended.
know that sometimes she knows what she means, sometimes she doesn't?
Well, we assume if she's gone to report now, she now knows that's what she wants to do.
I'm
That's all I'm
saying,
trying to
as a
say. That's her
person, how do you make the conclusion that sometimes she knows what she wants, sometimes she doesn't?
No, what I'm saying is what she wants might change over time. At the time, she didn't lay a charge. She then laid a charge. So her thinking has changed over time.
Can you dispute the fact that as an adult, employee, educated person, we must respect that she knows what she wants, she means what she says, and she says what she means? You and me have no particular legitimate reason to doubt her unless we state why. She's no imbecile.
No, of course not. Well, if you look at her, the WhatsApps here, and if you look at her testimony, she does say to you, sometimes I am playing along. So sometimes she's saying, I am doing something different to what I am saying.
Yes, that is the part I said you would have known better and analyzed better as an expert had you seen or heard through when those statements are tested in cross-examination. You agree with me that, and I don't dispute what you're saying. I'm saying your analysis would have been enhanced and more objective and more complete had you had sight of what exactly did she say when those things were challenged. Did she concede? Did she say the opposite of what we are saying? In this tribunal, not when they are flirting. Because I accept that you say when they are flirting, because one is a judge, the other is not. Therefore, I'm saying if I were to show you, if you had read the cross-examination, it would have enhanced your analysis and would have impacted on some of the things you assume because you don't know what she said and what she considered.
There are some things she did concede, but I think the substance of, I would not change the substance of what I said, having gone through the record. There are places where she disputes your interpretation, says something different, remains committed to her interpretation. So she does not give way on everything.
You would not change your view even if you see what you have not seen. It's a bizarre statement.
No.
You would not change, you don't know what you've not seen.
I went through the record last night. So now I have seen it. I cannot comment on a lot of the cross-examination about was there a grammatical error? Does the full stop look the same? Why are there two statements? That is not something that is for me to comment on. It's not for me to comment on whether or not WhatsApps were cropped or weren't cropped, what time things were. That falls outside what I'm doing. What I was looking at is where you are cross-examining her around what she said.
I'm saying, ma'am, when you gave us the report and when you gave your evidence in chief, you had not had that access. It's an ex post facto analysis you are making.
I had skimmed through it, and I had listened to what was said in the media, which was essentially the judge president saying, yes, we had flirtatious conversations, but I thought it was all I thought it was reciprocating was flirtatious. That seemed to, and in the opening of the evidence leaders' statement, she also makes a fairly similar comment that this was, he assumed it was flirtatious and was returned. When I go back and look at the testimony of asking for photographs, those were repeated requests. My opinion doesn't change that he asked repeatedly for a photograph and she didn't give it to him, no matter how many times it was repeated. I don't see any reason to change that. There were also the times where she was repeatedly asked about what is her favorite sexual position. She does not specify, oh, I like X, Y, and Z, and I like it like this in that conversation. And I also looked at the areas where I identified that she is engaging with him, and they're the same as the areas where you identify her as engaging with him. So on that.
Yeah, all I'm saying, ma'am, is what we established yesterday. I'm saying it would have enhanced your analysis, your evidence in chief, and your report. That's all I'm saying.
Possibly.
You must agree with me that when you've not looked at a particular aspect of the record, your analysis is incomplete. You must agree with me. It can't be that you undermine what you've not read. You don't know what you've not read. And I'm telling you now that reading the record on cross-examination would have enhanced, I don't even say, would have enhanced your analysis.
It certainly would have given me a clearer sense of where you are heading.
Yeah, I'm assuming, Ms. Vetten, I'm making this conversation, I'm going to stop it. I do it because I'm assuming that you are not the complainant's witness in these proceedings.
No, I'm not.
You are the witness to assist us with concept, to analyze for us, to assist us, not to support any party. That's why I'm engaging with you. When I make this point and you duck it, I'm not sure why, because I'm saying to you, you must agree that not being furnished with certain things or not having access or not having read a particular aspect of this case, particularly how we, in proceeding like this, test the veracity of claims, renders or may render your analysis deficient, your conclusions inchoate.
I don't agree. I think it would certainly have given me another perspective, but I think on my conclusions is, did he repeatedly ask her for photographs? And did she provide him with a photograph? Did he repeatedly ask her about sexual positions? Did she say no to him? That would not change.
I don't think we should proceed in this manner. Mrs. Vettel, the question is, you admitted you had not read
Yes.
some material,
Yes.
such as cross-examination. You had not read the respondent's affidavit and the like. The question is, do you agree that had you read those things, they could have enhanced your report?
They could have.
Please, yes.
Thank you. Can I take you to the conversation about pictures, right?
May I go to the bathroom?
Oh, yes, by all means, yeah. Maybe, Chair, I think
You might not be the only one.
I think she speaks for
Let
most
us
of
come
us.
back at 12.
Okay.
At 11. Chair, that's a 2 hour, 1 hour. You've just given us 1 hour, 15
sorry.
minutes.
I'm sorry. I withdraw that. At 11 o'clock, please.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn now.
So, bye.
Mr. Simelane. Don't sue me for that.
It will depend on my bank balance. I reserve my right. Ms. Vetten, I'm going to just cite a few examples of the things you omitted and things that I would like to get why you interpreted them the way you did. Can I take you to page 1165? It's the conversation, sorry. I know you're working on this, 8th June.
8 June, yeah?
Yes, yes. It's 2028 time at that. Yeah, it's a conversation. Well, just a conversation.
2028.
20, you see that emoji, winking emoji at 2028. You gave it some interpretation that it's differing. Remember that? Dr. Doctorate gives it another. And he's the expert on emojis, I suppose. He says, she says it's flirtatious. Should we take yours or hers?
No, I'm not commenting on the emoji. When I'm talking about deferring, it's when she's saying will do. The winking you can read as part of agreement,
Yes, okay, so.
but it's
it's
will
fine.
do,
So
wink, agreeing.
you take no, I don't know, she just said it's flirtatious. I don't, do you want us to take yours or Dr. Docrat? You're saying it means agree, but I'm saying to you, she said it's flirtatious.
Well, as a description, it's somebody winking.
Huh?
As a description, it's somebody winking.
Okay, it's fine.
The meaning you can attach to that.
It's fine. Can I take you to 1167? Can I take you to the conversation? Am I correct that you said she didn't send a picture at all?
She put up her profile picture.
Okay, so she did.
Yes, for everybody, but she didn't directly send a photograph to him, as I
It's
understand
fine.
it.
So it's that, but it's in this conversation, she sent it to him.
A profile picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not, are you sure it's a profile picture? Are you sure that it's a profile picture? I'll give you some time.
Well, that was my understanding from the evidence, was that it was a profile picture.
Okay. That's what you were told. Okay, no, that's fine. All right. We will.
And I can't see it clearly. I unfortunately can't see any
It's fine.
pictures or videos or.
No, it's fine.
Stickers.
It's fine. I'm really not. Yes, I think it's an argument. We'll make an argument. I think you. I get your answer. Can we also go to 1169? There's still a conversation about pictures.
Remember, I don't have the page numbers.
Are you there? Sorry. Give you the date. 8 June still.
Yes, but I would need what time?
Okay, sorry, I'm going to get there. Look at 2053.
Yes?
Yes. I mean, this probably links to the aspect of coaching we talked about in a way. She says, earn it. What is your interpretation of what she's saying?
She says, so if I look at the context, it's you are a trickster. Then she says, do you see what I have done, what you want me to do? And then her comment is earn it, which is in response to his,
Persistence.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I'm no ways,
Yeah. What
persistence.
she says, she must earn it. He must earn it. What is your interpretation of that? When she says earn it, it means when if I to give you for me, earn the picture.
Yes, you can certainly interpret it as that.
Yeah. No. I'm saying that she says earn it. What? Give me yours. Give me yours.
So, in the context of what they're saying, of what they're saying, it's picture, then it's a profile, it's a picture that he doesn't want because he says he'll wait for something else. He's been robbed. I've been fooled. She says, no ways. He says, you're a trickster. You're playing tricks on me. And she's saying to him then, do you see that I've done what you wanted me to do? I sent you a picture. Earn it.
Yeah, I think that's the question
Yeah.
I'm asking you. What does that mean?
That he must earn a picture.
What does that mean? What's your interpretation? To earn it, how? What must he do?
She doesn't say.
Okay, and what's your interpretation? Any interpretation?
Well, she sent him earn it, but without explaining how it is to be earned.
She's inviting him to do something. Earn it. Would you disagree with me?
You could say that.
Yeah. But you agree with me that she's not deferring there. She is positively stating what he must do. You and I can differ about what it is. But she is telling him to do something.
Exactly, which you can say is she is deferring. She's saying to him, these things need to happen
Ma'am,
before I send it to you.
I think I want to put it to you that I did tell you about this. I expect you to give an objective analysis rather than a sympathetic analysis to one party. I put it to you that in every interpretation, you are sympathetic towards a party in this proceeding. You give an interpretation that does not put a particular party in the bad light, despite what she says. I put it to you that that is what I have observed.
Let me explain to you again. When
Yes.
I say defer, I'm not going to. It means I'm not sending it right now. Things must happen before I send it to you. That is a form of deferral. It is the moment is deferred until you do X, Y, and Z. So now she's saying to him, earn it.
Okay,
Do
listen.
whatever you need to do, which she doesn't specify, in order to get your picture.
Okay, let's see how you deal with the 1170. Let's see. It's a conversation at 9:10. She says, "Yazi bamna xa ndifuna imali uzandinika." She says she wants money. You'll
Yeah.
you'll give me money. What
Yeah.
was your interpretation of this?
That was being quite blunt and crude. That if there is going to be anything here, it's going to be an exchange, it's going to be a transaction.
Did you hear my question?
You asked me for an interpretation?
No. I said, what did you say was this meant yesterday? You did mention it.
What did I say?
What did you say this meant?
It was being crude and blunt and repellent because it is a transaction. She's asking for money. That's what I said.
She's asked quid pro quo.
Yes, if you want a photo, then you send this to me.
Yeah, you will give me
Me
the money.
money.
She was transacting
Correct.
with him. You agree? Well, the other one I want to take you to, that gave me the thing now, is you omitted where she actually says, I think it's a 12:05. Let's go to 12:05. 19 June.
$12.05, you said?
Yes, page 12:05. It's 12:05. Yeah.
Which
Right.
date?
It's 22:24.
Which date?
Sorry, Miss Vetten. I know that we open. It's 20 June. So
Okay, 20 June is quite a long conversation. So what time did you say?
yes, 24 minutes past 10 in the evening. 22:24. She says to him, "Cute." And I'm saying this because you made a song and dance about people initiating or saying something after hours. You omitted this. Is there any particular reason? Before I put mine, you omitted where at 20 past 10 in the evening, she says to the JP, "You cute." Is there any particular reason why you omitted this one?
No, I have mentioned that this is in the context of conversation that's been going on throughout the day. And I did mention that she does describe him, I think there are two occasions where she makes a comment on his appearance,
Yes.
where she says cute, and then it's followed into, but weren't you younger then, or whatever. So there are two occasions where she does comment on his appearance.
It's fine. And let me take you to the other one, 12:06. It's still, and I'll tell you, they are not just two, but I'm going to take you to the one at 12:06. It's a conversation. It's still the same date. It's at 22:27, the time. She says it again. She says, "Cute Londo." See that too. And this also she does at night herself.
Is this not the same one?
I don't know. You tell me.
Okay, right. I see the sequence now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm putting it to you that, and I'm not doing this to nullify your views about the inappropriateness, as you called it, of the conversations at night by the respondent. I'm not now talking about whether he was appropriate. You said it was inappropriate. I'm saying when she does it, when she tells him you're cute, in the evening, are you prepared to call it inappropriate from her, or blurring the lines between this little girl and the father figure?
Yes, and you can see in my report, I describe some of her responses as being ambiguous.
Yes.
She is not clear all the time.
All right. I'm going to take you to the last one, where, and it's an old conversation. It's a long conversation. It's fine. I think we've made the point about. It's the one where they're discussing sex positions, right? I would like to take you to that one. That eventually, yeah.
It's at the end of June.
Yes. So sorry, Chair. I'm just going to get to it. It starts at 1191. Let's go to 1191. You will see. I'm going to take you to the specific. 119. Let's go back. In fact, that whole conversation ends. Yeah. It's the conversation of 16 June, sorry. Yes. See that? The specific time okay, in my page it's 1195, but the conversation, it's at 1816.
Yes.
Your interpretation of that conversation when she says, I'll go with whichever, I suppose sex position, we agree. But there's a word I like. And then she said, surprise. Am I correct that your interpretation was that she is refusing to commit?
Yes.
Would I be wrong, because now we are in the murky area of different interpretations? Would I be wrong that wanting to be surprised with a sex position is a preference on its own? It's not say doing nothing. When you say whichever position, it means I like all of them. Surprise me. Would I be too wrong to say that is a particular stance on the issue? She is giving a preferred answer, position.
Yes, she is. She's not being specific.
Yes,
She's leaving it open.
yes, but I'm saying to you, let's just intellectually be rigorous about it. It is a choice she's making. She says, I like whichever.
Exactly.
It's not, she's not the same as someone who says, who keeps quiet. It can't be.
Yes, she says, that says correct. She's saying to him, surprise. She's not saying exactly what she likes. She says, surprise.
No, she does. She says she'll go with whichever.
But what I am interested in is the conversation that follows it. You can't not have a favorite position.
It's fine. I'm not there.
Okay.
Don't go to analyze the one I'm not. Let's not avoid this one.
Sorry, Ms. Vetten, do you have a problem if somebody says to you, this is a pertinent statement, which says, I will go with whichever. Isn't that a pertinent statement?
Yes, it is. She is telling him something.
Very
That's
pertinent,
what I've-
very
that's what-
pertinently.
Yes, she's saying to him, I'll go with whatever, but my point is that she is saying something to him, but she's not specifying the position.
Well, Mr.
Which
Sikhakhane
is-
said, yesterday you said that she's refusing to comment.
To commit, she's refusing to give,
commit.
she's not giving a particular
Sorry.
position. That's my point, that's all. So why I highlight that is she says, surprise me. But it's what comes thereafter is lol, and then a pressing for, but you can't not have a favorite position.
But this is
That's
a
looking
pertinent,
at context,
This
yeah.
is a pertinent statement, which says, I will go with whichever.
Yes,
That's a very pertinent statement.
yes, I'm not disagreeing with you. Her statement
Sikhakhane,
is,
yes, go ahead. Proceed.
Yes, Chair. I'll proceed. So those are parts that I wanted to engage you on. The part I wanted to, okay, Mr. Madonsala has another, but I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Let's go to 1228. Sorry, Chair. 20 June. Right, it's fine. I want to take you to the conversation, the date you omitted as well. That's the date of this conversation, 23 June. It's at 1946.
'23.
23 June.
Yes.
So, and it's at 1946. I'm just pointing out what you omitted. And she says, uyandiphazamisa and igazi lami liyatshisa ngoku maniqale ndigqibe le. You see that? You know what it means?
You are disturbing me and now I'm getting heated up. Let me finish this first.
Yes, you omitted that.
It's an example of the statements that is ambiguous.
It's fine. All I'm saying is
Where I said, you can see that there is an exchange happening.
it's fine. Let me go to the following one at 1948. Same conversation. And she says, Shalubao, I like it. I like it. Okay, there's a grammatical error. I like it that. Kwenzeke ufike unomhla.
What page is that?
Oh, sorry. It's 1229, the page.
1229.
Is it the one of you're disturbing me and now I'm getting heated up? Let me finish this first.
No,
or
we've
is it
done that. Yeah.
keep on drooling, I like it so that when you arrive, you'll be interested. Is it that one? Yeah.
Yes.
What time is it?
It's at 1948. It's the, if I put it to you, you omitted. This is someone
I
clear.
didn't.
You didn't omit it.
No.
All right. I'm saying the interpretation. I'm sorry, you didn't omit it. This is someone who's inviting, who says to someone, I like it that way. I want you to come to me desiring. If I put it to you, that's not the language of the person you are describing. Who's a passive person who's doing something is being done to them,
No, I'm not saying she's a passive person.
right?
If you look at my conclusions, is that she tries to exercise what agency she can within the constraints of her particular circumstances. There are times when she does engage with him as a way of trying to resolve the situation, is to think, and in fact, this is something that she says, she says, I say no, I do this, I do that, it doesn't work, so now I engage. And you can see this happening, and this is your point, that the way they engage does change. And you can see this towards the end of June, July, that she does start to engage in she starts to engage in a sexual way. This is a definite example of it, as is the other one. So is the example about foreplay. So this is why I'm saying it's quite important to draw distinctions between different acts here. This is what I would call sexting. And her sexting, I think, with him can be a lot more ambiguous than her responses to photographs and let's meet and be intimate.
All right. I'm going to ask you again to stop giving some sympathetic interpretation to this. She is asking him. She says, I want you desiring so that when you come to me.
And I'm
You must
agreeing
have-
with you. She is
Yeah.
being open here.
And I've said it to you because this does not paint a picture of the person you consistently want to paint.
Not necessarily. I've said to you, she gives ambiguous responses. And
This is not ambiguous.
No, it's ambiguous in the sense that if you read it with some of the other things, it starts to become, the question you ask is, this person is giving quite different responses at different times.
You know what the problem is, Ms. Vetten? Is that when it comes to the complainant, you are prepared to give very sympathetic, long-winded explanation for what she says, but you don't do that when you interpret what the respondent does. And that's what I was asking you at the beginning, that as an expert, you are not here as an advocate for complainants. You are here to interpret, give objective expert evidence. But I'm putting it to you that when it comes to her statements, you give them a sympathetic interpretation, but you don't do the same when interpreting what the respondent says. It's quite blunt, actually. You inappropriate, church elder. You're quite very daring. And that's what I'm putting to you, that you are sympathetic to a party. This is not ambiguous, this statement. This is not a child talking to a father.
No, and that's my point is that her conduct does become ambiguous. It is this point that at times she doesn't say anything, then she does engage, then she is evasive. The respondent is pretty clear about what he wants.
It's fine. I'm going to
That's
put
not
this
a problem.
bluntly.
Well,
Let
it's
me
very
put
clear
this.
what he wants.
She is telling him, I want you to desire so that when we have sex, you have energy and desire. This child says so.
Exactly. And she says
She
so.
never says, the complainant never says she wants sex. The question must just be rephrased.
Yeah.
She understands.
She understands what
She has
I'm
got the
saying.
words in front of her.
Yeah.
She should just answer the question.
I'm saying she's not ambiguous. And she's asking for that. I want you to have energy when you come to me. And I'm not asking you to abandon your complainant. I'm saying let's be honest about interpreting statements and not be sympathetic to anyone. I'm saying this statement,
I
I'll
agree
put it
with
to
you,
you.
and it's one I've highlighted.
yes, I'm putting it to you that this statement is not consistent with your description of the complainant in this conversation. No child says this to a father. Not that I know.
I think this is the point I was trying to make to you about her dilemma. She sits within a position where she works with somebody, where he is also approaching her sexually, and where she also needs to have respect for him as this father figure. There are times when she responds differently from different positions. This is one where she's clearly focusing, where she's clearly responding from male to female or man to
Yeah,
woman.
I'll tell you the danger with what you're doing is that you are giving a generalized interpretation which is sympathetic. And this is the deficiency in your testimony because you did not speak to her. You are imposing your own, as I said, idiosyncrasies, your own generalizations, and your own inclinations in these issues. Had you spoken to her, is it not possible that she would have been blunt and tell you that's what she wanted?
That may have been the case. As you say, I didn't speak to her, so I don't know.
Yes.
Mrs. Vettel, is there any ambiguity in this statement?
No, there is no ambiguity. Her responses are what I'm trying to, perhaps haven't put that sufficiently clearly, is that when you look at the context of times where she is saying no, 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 and then she gives a response like that, that's where the ambiguity comes in.
But why do you bring the other things when we look at this specific statement, which stands on its own, written in partly in Xhosa, partly in plain, simple English?
It's back
Does
to
it not say what it says?
It does say what it says. My point really is trying to understand, which is what I said at the beginning, is what I am trying to do is in the context of what she's been saying over time and how the conversation is shifting, in what direction is it shifting? Here she is being pretty overt and sexual as she is in other places. There is that kind of sexual exchange and the sexting that I talked about to some of the actions. That is what I am trying to say. There are times where she is explicit, and that is where the ambiguity, the evasiveness, the tricksterness that Mbenenge is referring to comes in, is that there are these times where she is saying no, and then there are these times where she is giving these, let's do this. That is where it
Ms.
becomes
Vettel, sorry
unclear.
to interrupt you. I was just asking whether the statement is ambiguous. You have answered my question. You said it is not ambiguous.
Yes.
I'm happy with your answer,
Okay.
unless you are not happy with your
No.
answer.
Did you?
Sikhakhane?
Yes, it's the last two questions. Did you have access to what we've called in the record the initial complaint?
No.
You wouldn't be able to dispute it because it's on the record. That in the original, let's call it the initial complaint, consistent with these omissions, the complainant in the statement, in the complaint about which we are in these proceedings, excluded what she had in the initial, which demonstrated violence on her part, belligerence towards a court manager. Were you aware?
I know that there was a conflict with the court manager, and it comes through in the
Yes.
threads. So
But
I
I'm
was
saying
aware of that.
Yes, when I'm just giving it to you because it is consistent with what I was saying to you. You've got to analyze a certain conduct of a person you say fears authority. When she omits initially, she has a complaint where she writes about this belligerence of her physically confronting and stopping a supervisor, authority of the OCJ. And of course, because that's not consistent with someone who is a little child who fears authority. I just thought I wanted to raise with you that she omitted it when she did this. And the point I was putting to you about that, because it's on the record, is that it's omitted because the first one indicates a person who is not timid, who's not docile. It doesn't submit. Is actually a very, very assertive person. It's not the person you are describing. Somewhere she uses words like uyanya, you shit.
I don't have that in front of me.
Yes, I'm saying because those are on the record. Would those statements, someone who says to someone uyanya, someone who's authority, would you agree with me that person cannot be described as a submissive, docile person?
Under those circumstances, no.
Yeah. Let me ask this last question. I asked Ms. Mengo this question, and I think it's better directed at you. Because you've testified several times, has it happened that there are complaints that are illegitimate?
Certainly,
Have you experienced false complaints?
yes.
Would you agree with me that it's actually false complaints that undermine great work that people like you, and there are very few, and I'm not patronizing you, Lisa, you only, in this country, you are a leading intellectual for women on that aspect. Nobody writes, nobody has actually done this for women like you've done. And the point I'm putting to you is, does it undermine 30 years of your work and others when false claims are made, in your view?
That's a question people often ask, and the answer to that is only if you think that all women are the same and that if one woman lies, therefore everybody else lies. So, you know, when somebody lies about their house having been broken into in order to claim insurance, we do not therefore start to doubt everybody who now goes and lays an insurance claim. And that's the attitude we should take with these. One should make them less exceptional. We should allow for the fact that, yes, some women will not behave well. And the fact that some women behave well doesn't mean that all women behave well.
Yes.
And when one woman is not truthful, we shouldn't take that to mean as, reinforcement of the stereotype.
I didn't mean that. I know you're doing that to me, but I didn't mean that. You know what I mean. I'm not suggesting that when people generalize, they are right. I'm not. I know you're jumping to that because you want to nullify this point I'm making. People do undermine great things because the conduct of a minority or even of one person, it may not be right, but people generalize. People say so many things about black people when they've met one black person who did something. So I'm saying conduct of a person can undermine great work. And I'm saying to you, false claims may undermine great work in this patriarchal society where women are facing gender-based violence every day and sexual harassment every day. And it's a patriarchal society because men deny the sins they commit. And if even if it's one or two that make false claims, they perpetuate stereotypes and useless defenses by males who commit this. That's all I'm putting to you. That it does undermine great work. This term, sexual harassment, you will know, emerges, people grapple with it in America since 1970s, grappling with it, and you're still grappling with it. I'm saying to you, a false claim, as you say you've met some of them, undermine great work of few people like you who've been working under testing circumstances. It undermines that work. It has the effect of undermining that work. Do you agree with me?
If you allow to, Mr. Sikhakhane, so I think it's important as part of my work to try to push back at that kind of stereotype and
Sure.
at that kind of generalization. Just as it is important, as you point out, to say that because one black person does something bad,
Sure.
you do not generalize. And so one should always challenge any kind of generalization. So that would be my response. Does it undermine? Well, if one person can really undermine 30 years of bad work, and the point is, why would you want to focus on all those who go and ignore all those who are invisible? We're watching a case now.
It's
We're
fine.
not seeing the cases we don't.
It's actually, I put it to you that conduct of a few people can undermine great work of many people in circumstances where we're dealing with what you say is a patriarchal society, male-dominated society where males deny what they do and say claims are false. It does, you may not agree with me, that when one is found to be false, it has an impact on those who have true claims. But I suppose you don't agree with me for your reason.
It may well have an impact, but one must resist such generalizations
Sure.
in order to reduce the negative impact.
That's
So
fine.
sorry, just to I understand your answer to be saying it may well be that those who tell lies here and there, it may well be that they undermine the great job, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't be so, because after all, people lay false claims during burglary to say to claim insurance and the like, and we don't stigmatize
Correct.
those kind of false claims. Why should we begin to stigmatize almost in general when a few women here and there lie? Your answer is, I guess, it may do so, but it shouldn't.
That is correct. And I
Sure.
think your word stigmatizing is very, very important. And if I go back to stereotypes, the stereotype is that all women lie. And I'd say stereotypical. And we approach women's evidence with caution. So that's why it is important to allow for the fact that, yes, women aren't saints. They will behave badly and they will do things badly. But we must resist temptations to generalize and say, well, therefore we must revert to the previous position where we disbelieved, where we were of disbelief.
Yes, I agree with you. And I have no further question to you. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Advocate Skippers, sorry. Okay, Advocate Skippers.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions.
Chair, it's me now who need a look. Can I be excused? No, I'm going to come back. I'm saying, can I be excused? I'm going to come back. Thank you.
All right.
I don't want to adjourn everything for.
Well, I don't know. Are you sure of that? Because we don't want to pressurize people here. All right, okay. Advocate Skippers.
Thank you, Chair. You have now indicated that you did read the cross-examination of the complainant as well. After reading that, is your opinion changed from your report?
No, it isn't. It's, I said, if you're looking at something like sexual harassment, you're looking for something that is repeated and persistent after somebody has said no. And you can see that when it comes to things like the photographs, that is repeated and persistent. So are questions about favorite sexual positions, even if you said surprise me. So are questions about let's be intimate. On more than one occasion, there is either a very clear no, or there's a whole lot of other things that get said, but the requested item, the photograph or whatever, is never actually forthcoming. So there are repeated and persistent requests. And there is an ambiguity in what the complainant is doing. As I said yesterday, she's by no means an ideal victim, in that she does engage in quite sexual terms at times, and then there are times where she's very definite, no, honourable member, hi. So that doesn't change.
You were also asked about the fact that you don't know the causa culture. But will culture trump something, for instance, where someone persistently says no? Will culture have a role to play here? If someone continuously say no, do you have to look into culture then?
Well, that's a very tricky question. Some people would say yes, but I think if you look at the definition of sexual harassment, it's saying no.
All right, and then with regards to that, I don't know how to pronounce that surname, Koko, judgment, where the complainant made a statement. She referred to what was said in the appeal judgment. Are you familiar with that case?
I am, yes.
You also know that that judgment has ultimately been overruled by the SCA.
Yes,
So that judgment is what was said on that stage is no longer the case law.
correct.
And the complainant was referring to the judgment
At that point in time.
at that point in time. Thank you, Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Vetten, it strikes me, having listened to your cross-examination today, that the focus of the cross-examination is almost entirely on Ms. Mengo's conduct. And it reminds me that despite all of the legal protections that we have to protect women from sexual harassment, at the end of the day, how we as women behave is regarded as more important than how a man behaves, a man who's your superior in the workplace. In fact, the most senior judge in the province, when he demands sexual photos from you in the first WhatsApp exchange that you have with him, and persists in the face of multiple indications that you and attempts to say no. Do you have a comment on that?
That is how I read what I see here. And I think it is, again, back to some very old stereotypes around it is women who lead men on, women who don't know what they want, who say no when they mean yes, etc., etc. The scrutiny is, as you pointed out, on the complainant. It is why we eventually got around to abolishing the cautionary rule in rape cases, because again, it was, well, can we really believe her because there are all these possibilities as to why she might lie. So we have a very long history of, yeah. And it's the expression you've often had is, I felt like I was the one on trial.
Yes. And what would become clear from the cross-examination and the questions asked of you, or what becomes clear from the cross-examination and the questions asked of you, is that there is a perception that only a certain type of woman can be harassed. And that is someone who is docile, scared of standing up for themselves or speaking out. Is that
I
correct?
think really that's a question for argument. It's a question for argument. Sorry.
No, it's not, Chair. That was specifically
It is
a series
a question
of...
for argument. It is a question for argument.
Okay. My question is based on a series of questions asked by
Maybe
Mr.
you should reframe it. You
For
can't
the
present
record, Chair, I do want to register an objection to this examination as a gross and, in fact, irresponsible mischaracterization of the cross-examination by Madam Chair.
That may be the perception, but that is how I received that cross-examination as a woman.
And that is why I'm saying, people, this is a matter for argument. You can go and argue it when the time for argument comes.
Okay, let me rephrase it,
The
Chair.
witness has nothing to do with the views that you people are entertaining.
That you people, Chair, you mean the complainant's representatives?
Counsel.
Oh.
The way you see things as counsel is not necessarily the way that she sees. And the way he understands that is not necessarily the way you understand. These are matter eminently for argument.
Well, let me
Don't bring
rephrase,
in the
Chair.
witness to settle arguments between two counsel, please.
No, Chair, it's not an argument with me and my counsel, but with my opponents, but let me ask it differently. Is it possible, Ms. Vetten, that someone who's able to stand up for herself in one context is unable to do it in another context?
Yes, people are not necessarily consistent. And, you know, we feel differently about different people. So some people might be more intimidating to us than others. So, I mean, you can be a lot ruder with somebody because you don't fear them, but you might fear somebody else. And I think that's the point we should always remember with people, is that we would like them to be consistent and predictable and to behave in one way all the time. And including myself in this, we are not like that. You always have to look at context, dynamics, interaction, histories.
Yes. Now, Ms. Vetten, you were asked about culture, and you are not an expert on culture.
No.
So I don't want to ask you about your interpretation of cultural practices. You are an expert on gender-based violence and the experience of gender-based violence in the South African context specifically. Is that correct? Would I be correct to say that culture in the South African context is often used as a justification for GBV and sexual harassment of women? And I don't limit that just to African culture. I'm thinking of even the idea that in South African culture we say things like boys will be boys.
Yes, I mean, I think we sometimes, how can we say, culture is, we all have culture. We cannot get away from it. Sometimes I think there is a tendency to speak as if only African people have culture. And I think Mr. Sikhakhane has made this point numerous times, that the assumption that Eurocentrism, it's universal. But we all have culture. It shapes us in many ways. But the other really, really important point about culture that one can never forget is that culture is not monolithic. It's not cast in stone. It changes, it's negotiated, and it's dynamic. And you can even see that being said at the Constitutional Court, for instance, in Bay, for example, where they talk about the fluidity of culture, how it's lived. And it's those earlier points that there is what is officially said and there's what people do. And I mean, it's really important that culture always remain malleable and fluid, because otherwise we would still be living the lives of 2,000 years ago, if not older.
And in South Africa, the Constitution and our laws on sexual harassment, the code, are designed to protect all victims of harassment, irrespective of race, gender, or ethnicity. Would that be correct?
Yes, exactly, because I think one must acknowledge difference and plurality, but there's also a point where you could end up fragmenting things where you have 17 different laws to accommodate 17, 18, however many you want to proliferate. So you do need to have some, what will bind a society together is a common set of shared values. And that, I think, is what the Constitution is trying to do. And it is obviously allowing for recognition of difference, but it is trying to have those common sets of shared values that all of us, should be.
Well, I'm not going to
aspiring
ask you about your interpretation of the Constitution,
sorry.
because you're not an expert on that. But the point I was trying to make is that the law specifically is culture neutral.
Yes.
Now, you said in your evidence under cross-examination that sometimes lines get blurred when one person's appreciation, was I think the word you used, is another person's sexual harassment. You recall that?
I do.
Now, is that perhaps why the definition of sexual harassment specifically prioritizes a subjective perception of the complainant, so that through the use of the word unwanted, for example? Could you comment on that?
Yes, it does do that. I mean, I must say, whenever I have been educating around sexual harassment, that is the area where there is always the most tension, is, yes, but I'm just appreciating somebody. Or I am just doing this, or I'm just doing that. And that's when one has to have, I think, quite robust engagement to say, well, you may be appreciating, but what is the other person's experience of it? Do they simply accept what you are saying you do, or do you listen and take their feedback as to how they are experiencing this, and they don't experience this as appreciation at all? And therefore you need to modify your conduct. If this is to be an egality, if we are to talk about human interactions as exchanges between each other where we negotiate how we are to be treated. So yes, that is why you do need to look at what is the subjective impact on somebody. That is, as far as I understand, part of the test, is to look at how does that person experience it, what do they think about it, do they feel it impairs their dignity? It is subjective.
All right. But presumably you have to weigh in on the respondent's understanding of the situation as well. It can't just simply be a one-sided evaluation.
Of course you do. And that is why I think sometimes, and there is that element, I think, of trying to think about what is reasonable, how would somebody outside the situation look at it? And so you do need to listen to, okay, so what is the respondent's understanding of what is going on? How did the respondent, if they were told to stop, what did they do? Did they listen to that? Did they find other ways to get around it? Did they leave? I mean, I'll think of an example where one ended up having to conclude there was no sexual harassment. Where he'd initially expressed interest in somebody, she'd said, look, I'm not terribly certain right now, maybe, possibly some other time. So he waited 3 months and he asked her, I'm checking to see if you are interested. And she said no. And he did not ever contact her again. You cannot say that he committed sexual harassment under those circumstances. She'd left it open. He'd followed up. She said no. So in that particular matter, we had to conclude there wasn't any sexual harassment. There are also situations where I think you have to look at what does the person do. So, I'm thinking of a case we recently dealt with. People were offended by his behavior. Was it sexual harassment? No, he might be opinionated and annoying, but what he did not meet that test, did not, I think, amount to sexual harassment.
All right, I want to move on. You were asked, in fact, if you can go to the 8th of June, that's page 1170, Chair. 8th of June at 9:10 in the evening, 2110.
$21.10.
2110.
Okay. Yeah.
This is the part of the WhatsApps that you asked about where Ms. Mengo says, I wonder if I asked for money, would you give it? Now, this message comes after, so this is at 9 o'clock, 9:10 at night, and the conversation started at about 7 o'clock at night. It's the first day of their WhatsApp exchanges, the 8th of June. So this comes after about 2 hours of WhatsApps on that first night. You were asked for your interpretation of that, and you described it, I'm just summarizing, as transactional. Now, what wasn't put to you is what Ms. Mengo's explanation of that statement was. Under cross-examination, although I stand to be corrected, it could have been in her evidence in chief, but her evidence was that this statement of hers was because she knew that if you asked a man for money, he would leave you alone, he would run away. And that's why she did that. Does that change your analysis of it being transactional?
No, I mean, in fact, let me see where I can. If somebody says this to you, it is repellent and crude. So I would certainly see, so if you put it in these kinds of terms, I would see it as a way of really repelling somebody. Only the most transactional person would engage with this. But to say that, it's a very crude way to say to somebody, okay, if you want to engage with me, then these are the terms on which it's going to be. And either you're going to like it, you're going to leave it. And clearly he didn't like it. And she doesn't pursue it. So that's why it also would seem to me why it would be something that is intended to be a repellent.
Okay, let's talk about another instance in which Ms. Mengo said something that you were asked under cross-examination. It's at page 1229. Sorry, I'm just trying to find how I give you the reference to that. But I'll summarize it. You may be able to find it. It's the section where she said, I want you to remain greedy, so when you come to me.
Linda, there's just one question before we carry
Yes,
on.
sorry.
I just want to ask Ms. Vetten, where she says, I want money, would you give it? Should you look at it from his perception as well, how he would understand it?
Yes, and he puts his answer there. He is understanding her as asking for money. And his response is life is not about money.
Thank you. The next section I wanted to go to is 23 June. So it's page 1229 of our bundle. And it's 23 June. I think it's 1948. (1946) and then 1948. So the top of the page.
Sorry, 20 June is quite a long conversation, so I think
Sorry,
check if
in the
I'm not still
evening,
in there.
1946. It's 23 June.
Okay, I'm still in 21st June.
Okay.
6 June, 22. Yeah, 23 June?
Okay. So you recall that conversation?
Yeah.
And that's very clearly sexual. What Ms. Mengo says there is very clearly sexual. She didn't deny that.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are a couple of examples where she is.
You were asked under cross-examination if your evidence on this was limited by your not having spoken to Ms. Mengo. You recall that?
Yes.
I want to put to you what Ms. Mengo's evidence on this was and ask if it changes your answer. So she was asked about this specifically, and she said, I did not want him to have interest. I wanted to satisfy him, otherwise I would never have had rest. To satisfy him with the conversation as he is continuing with the messaging, I was still in the position where I knew he was my boss by making sure I respond to him. The courage I had in my previous messages, he was not cognizant of that or take it serious. That is why then I sought fit to let me rather respond to him, as this is the response he wants. So that was her response. Do you have any comment? Does it change your interpretation of that engagement?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think the point I was trying to make yesterday as well was that you see her far more sexual comments and responses coming towards the later end of their engagement, not really upfront in their very first conversation. There she's like, let's do this is what this I will do it. The maths is wrong. You'll give me money. It's not really sexual, but it's as you get deeper into the conversation, as I said, it tapers off after 28th of July, more or less, the sexualized content. She does start making these more explicit comments. So I do read that as somebody who, in a previous section, in a previous session, he's asked her about, will you be intimate with me? No. Go and read the Bible. Well, what about it? No, she says, no. And then she has a picture of, honorable member, I am shocked. But he still persists. So clearly this no, the way I would understand it, is she's realizing not necessarily working. So switching to this might be another way to try to engage, to engage, because he does persist. Even when she says no, he does continue. I mean, in various different ways. He keeps asking for photographs. She said to him, surprise me. But he still wants to continue asking about questions around sexual positions. Even when she doesn't answer in the evening, he picks it up again and wants to continue. And she says, are you still asking me about that? So if you're looking at a thread of conversations over time and how she is changing her engagement or how she's trying to adapt or figure out what's going to stop this, that would be consistent.
Yes. And it's common cause, well, you'll have seen on the WhatsApps that despite an invitation by the judge present or an attempt to meet, that Ms. Mengo did not meet with him. And it's common cause that they never did have sex.
That's right. In fact, she even says to him at one point, are you still asking about that, about the meeting in East London?
Thank you, Ms. Vetten. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Just as a general statement, I've had an advert about some of these things which says, a no is a no. What is it that you don't understand about no? You are aware of that advert?
Which part of no don't you understand? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's right. So the starting point, I'm sure, should be where it's clear a no is a no. Isn't that the starting point?
Yes.
Conversely, the starting point should be a yes is a yes.
Yes.
And nobody should second guess a woman when she says no, and nobody should second guess a woman when she says yes.
Exactly. I think the point about...
Sorry.
Oh, so sorry.
Just answer me first. What is your answer?
The yes, you need to look at the context, and I think sometimes the no as well. But that would be your starting point, is that you
Well,
take,
who thinks they have got the right to second guess a woman when she says no? And who has got the right to think they must second guess a woman when she says yes? Who has got that right?
well, I think when you are, I'm going to say it in the context of violence, is again the question of,
Sorry, do you find it difficult to answer that question?
all right, put it to me again then. Do you want to put it to me again then?
No, I'm saying, maybe I should rephrase it. Does anybody has got the right to second guess a no? Does anybody has got the right to second guess a yes?
No.
Well, you answered my question. Do you want, I'm satisfied with your answer. You want to elaborate? I thought it was a simple thing.
If I may elaborate, but I mean, maybe that's unnecessary.
Sorry?
If I may elaborate, but maybe that is unnecessary.
Well, unless you want to change the no and change the yes.
No,
If you are not going to change that, then there's not necessary as far as I'm concerned, because I just asked a simple question. Actually, Mrs. Vetten, is it not precisely because it's not because we have got problems, precisely because people think they can second guess a no, and simply because people think they can second guess a yes. Isn't that precisely the point?
that is the point. Or that they
Yes.
can infer yes from conduct when they shouldn't always do that.
Well,
Like
no.
short skirts.
Anyway, I wasn't talking about conduct. I was talking about a yes.
Stated
and a
verbal,
no.
yes.
Nobody should second guess any woman, because the starting point there's the adult, they know what they want, and nobody should try to second guess their decision. They must respect it. And no is a no, a yes is a yes.
Correct.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody wants to ask questions about whether a woman's no should be respected or a woman's yes should be respected. I don't know if there's anyone who wants to answer a question about that. Ask a question.
None, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Vettel, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have no further witnesses to call in the case for the complainant.
Yes, all right, fine, thanks. Mr. Sikhakhane?
Chair, I will open my case with a short statement, but may I take an adjournment? Just want to be sure that when I say witnesses are here, they are. I don't have an instruction about who's available at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
All right, we will wait and
Chair, before you adjourn, we do need a ruling on what our rights are as the complainant's legal representatives cross-examine, I think, before the respondent opens his case.
we were given around, was it around lunchtime? No, not lunch, is not there yet. At 11 o'clock, we were given some documents. I don't know, I assume it was your application and opposition to it. We haven't even been able to open that because we're busy here. So we can't even tell you when we will make that ruling because we haven't even seen the first page. We haven't
Yes.
even opened.
I understand, Chair. The difficulty is that we do need to know how to prepare and how to proceed before the respondent opens their case. But I accept fully that all of this has come to you very late, just because of the circumstances.
Yes, maybe let me consult with members of the panel. I think let's come together again at 1:45, during which time we would have hopefully had time to look at the application, and also maybe people will have lunch, and then we resume at 1:45.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn until then.